Enter if you dare this ghastly conversation of teens fraught with despair and recent lacerations. Final girl, chase after her, don't let her get away. But first, the Slumber Podcast Massacre with TNA.
Welcome to Slumber Podcast Massacre with TNA. That's Tim.
That's Andy.
And this is a podcast about horror. Every week, Tim and I get together and we talk about a different film from the horror genre, from your well-known classic down to that rare gem saying fuck you in an elevator on the back of your video store shelf. This week, Tim and I are going to talk about the 1988 killer toy classic, Child's Play. Tim, when you were little, what was your favorite toy? What was your good guy? Did you have
Oh, man. Well, I'm going to tell you.
It doesn't have to be a doll necessarily, but yeah, what was that toy that made that connection with you?
Well, I'm going to tell you two real quick. The first one, I didn't get to have much of a connection to it because it was a robot that had an inflatable top upper portion, and the lower portion on the floor was almost kind of looked like it was like a rectangle, kind of like one of those vacuum cleaners that aren't electric, you know? Yeah. So it had this sort of like scooting bottom that had wheels, and then it had lights rigged up in the top and stuff like that, and it made noises and everything. And we had it. We were in this bi-level house in Maryville. So the basement wasn't like way too far down. It was only like 4 steps down in the basement. And it had a tile floor down there. So that's where I had it because it could roll around and everything. I had that thing for maybe a week. And there were one too many occasions of that robot deciding to turn on and make noises and flashlights on its own in the middle of the night with no one else around. And finally, my parents were like, get that fucking robot out of here. And it was gone. I didn't get to cry about it. I didn't get to mourn it or anything. It was just, no, we're getting rid of it.
Right. Dude, I had not to interrupt before the other toy comes in. I had a very similar thing happen. I had a little remote control R2-D2, and in the middle of the night one night, I woke up and it was going off. And it was that panic of like, shit, all that stuff's real. Oh my God, this is it. A ghost is going to kill me. I'm like screaming for my dad. And he comes, he's like, when the batteries wear down, this thing happens. It happens. Go back to sleep. I'm just like, what? Reality has been shaken to its core.
Especially if it's doing that R2 sound where R2's like worried, like like that or whatever.
That mournful, like
yeah.
No, it wasn't doing that. It was really happy. So that's even more frightening.
Yeah,
sometimes. Like,
that's creepy.
It's gonna gleefully come over and shock me with its.
One thing I love about R2-D2 is if you ever listen to the Audio Slave song, it's called "Like a Stone," and there's that awesome Tom Morello guitar solo in the middle. Do yourself a favor, listen to that song, and the next time you listen to it, just picture not the sounds coming from Tom Morello's guitar, but it's actually like R2-D2 singing it, like just kind of like concert lights, and he's just swinging back and forth, making all the noises. And it really fucking sounds like R2 just rocking out.
Hey, all you got to do is say Tom Morello guitar solo. I'll check it out.
Yeah, it's worth listening. So anyway, that second
toy number 2.
Yeah.
I assume this was were you very young with this toy? Oh, yeah. It sounds like a baby's toy.
Well, yes. And it wasn't
so much
a toy, but if we're talking about raw connection, it was my pillow, Fluffy. Fluffy was the name of my pillow. Most people wouldn't consider that a toy, but I carried it with me wherever I went.
Sure.
And it was a fantastic pillow. I mean, it wasn't just because I liked it because it was my pillow. It actually was a great pillow. And then there was the day that I came home, and I went out somewhere with one of my parents and I came back and there was a different pillow. This was early in the morning, a different pillow on my bed. And I said, where's Fluffy? Immediately, like I don't care what pillowcase you put on, you can put that Star Wars pillowcase on it, whatever. I know it's not Fluffy. So I look at it and I'm like, well, where's Fluffy? And then my parents tried to tell me that, Fluffy was old and that they had to replace it, and that, that I wasn't going to be using Fluffy anymore. And I immediately panicked. Like, well, where is Fluffy now? Where, like a parent who's has just been called by the police, coming down to the police station. Like, where is my child?
Yeah.
And I'm like, where is Fluffy? And Fluffy was out in the garbage cans in the front, and my bedroom faced the street, the front of the house. And so I spent that entire morning, like hours, just on my window ledge, just bawling and crying and staring at the garbage cans. So the garbage men came, and I watched them empty the garbage cans out, and I was devastated, absolutely devastated. Wow. And so, yeah. I mean, she was probably full of germs. My parents were like, Jesus fucking Christ! Like he doesn't do anything without this pillow. But right. I mean, it was a heartbreaker.
So you're saying your parents might have gotten rid of it. It was full of germs. Maybe it could have harmed you in some way.
It could have. It could have.
Wow, what a great bridge!
I know it did emotionally.
This week's episode, then, Tim. Child's play or a toy tries to harm the child.
Yeah, it sure does.
I really got to work on the transitions. That's the roughest part of the show. It's the roughest part.
We do it all off the cuff. It's cool.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Fuck it. We had enough bits. It's Child's Play from 1988. This was written by, we got 3 writers on this one. Everyone had their hand in this. Don Mancini, John Lafia, and Tom Holland. Also directed by Tom Holland. I thought he was a lot younger than that. Like, he looks good for his age in Spider-Man. Just kidding. Different Tom Holland.
Yeah.
And this stars Catherine Hicks as Karen Barclay. When I read that, I'm like, oh, her name's Karen? I've seen this movie 20 times. And I'm like, oh. Alex Vincent as Andy, Chris Sarandon as Detective Norris, and our main man, Brad Dourif as Charles Lee Ray, a.k.a. the Chucky. Had a budget of $9 million, made about 33. I'd say that's a hit. It is a hit. It spawned several sequels. Chucky became an icon, maybe not the tier of the original 4. He's like a Pinhead tier.
Yeah, I'd say that he is Pinhead adjacent. Yeah.
Yes. And with number of sequels also.
Right. Yeah, it's an interesting franchise for me because, as I'm sure we'll get into as we get into the discussion, I was full throttle into horror movies by several years. I mean, by I don't know, nearly a decade by the time this movie came out, because I started so young, and yet I never gravitated towards this franchise or even this first movie, which this is one of those that falls under the umbrella of first one's great, the rest of them suck kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Or at least that's the popular opinion. But I never even got into the first one. And I think I know why. When you've been inundated with like nudity and sex and all that stuff from like, age, I don't know, 10, I guess, is when we started watching like the Fridays and stuff like that. By the time I got to be in 8th grade, and then, this came out in 88. So I was either in 7th or 8th grade at that time, depending. And by the time that comes out and it's a doll, it just didn't have the magnetism for me. It didn't have the heat. It didn't have the sizzle. So I didn't really pursue it, but you did.
Yeah. This one to me, because this was like, I'm like a year younger than you, and I didn't have access to the horror movies. They intrigued me, but also scared me. So, I had little doses. I had my nightmare stuff, which I loved. Anything that I got a hold of, I loved. And I kind of loved that new wave of like iconic figures, because, it's like, they're like the new punk monsters, right? Because you had like, oh, there's Dracula. Like your parents would be like, who's really scary? Dracula and the Wolfman and Frankenstein. It's like, oh, really, Mom? Guess who's scary now? Jason and Michael Myers and Freddy Krueger. And so this just seemed like that next like there's just something about the name Chucky really popped to me. It's a name that, like in Rugrats, that kid's name is Chucky and he's goofy, but it also can sound menacing. Like it's a goofy sounding name and an innocent sounding name, but it can be made like Chucky. Like you can say it's scary and it's hard. And maybe this is weird. I've always kind of been a little fascinated with like murderous kids. Like The Bad Seed, my cousins used to watch that all the time. My mom was like, you cannot watch that movie. And maybe that was part of the like, why? Like maybe she thought she knew that would just push me over the edge. I'd be like, it's cool to do that. Okay.
Well, and shit like that happens. I mean, Leopold and Loeb ruined it for everybody. Like once it actually became true that young people could be truly sinister, then yeah, parents had to watch their backs.
Yeah, I don't know. That's just always been fascination of mine is like kids that are like willed or compelled to murder. Like even when I took like a screenwriting class in college, like my treatment was about a like little kid super soldier who would like violently take out his opponents, you know. It's like this Robert Rodriguez to the next level kind of thing. So then when this came out and just, I don't know, like the idea of a killer doll wasn't anything new, but just it's like the My Buddy thing was huge at the time, the My Buddy doll. So this is like I was at the age where I could see those parallels. So I also got a lot of the like, maybe this movie's saying something else on top of it being a horror movie, you know, or like the dangers of consumerism or materialism or whatever. Not that I like really grasp that, but I think that was starting to sink in a little for me.
Can you sing that My Buddy commercial for me?
Tim, I'm so glad you asked because I was going to offer it up unsolicited anyway. My buddy, wherever I go, you're going to go, my buddy. I'm going to show you everything I know. My buddy and me like to climb up a tree. My buddy and me, boom, boom. We're the best friends that could be. Then there's a key change. My buddy and me. Boom. Then they came out with Kid Sister. I don't remember the Kid Sister.
You did a little bit of a mashup there. And it's how I remember it too. Yeah.
Oh, is there some Mandela effect going on here?
Because the My Buddy is wherever I go, he goes.
Oh.
And then it was the Kid Sister was wherever I go, you're gonna go. Yeah, that's the way I remember it too.
And you're right. You're absolutely right.
That is the way I remember it too. And then when I watched the commercial today,
do you think they came up with the Kid Sister doll just because they were like, I came up with a better run for the ad, but I don't.
Yeah, because it flows a little bit better lyrically, you know.
Yeah. It's a little jazzier. You're gonna go.
Yeah. You don't have to slide up to the note, you know.
Right.
He goes. Yeah. But here's what I didn't know though, is that speaking of My Buddy, I didn't realize that Chucky's outfit so closely resembles Buddy, like with the overalls and the striped shirt. Like that's not somebody saying like, oh, it might have been influenced by. No, it was.
And it's a Buddy, a good guy. Now the My Buddy doll did not have the TV show and all the, and the serials and it wasn't the marketing phenomenon that the good guy doll is.
Yeah.
But, so I was already kind of obsessed with this movie. And then I watched the Siskel and Ebert review of it. Cause at 11 years old, I never missed Siskel and Ebert. Or 12, however old I was. And they showed the scene where she first realizes Chucky has no batteries. And I was just like, that's the most effective scene in any movie I've ever seen in my life. Like, and I was just like, how in the fuck is she going to get out of that situation? Oh my God. She knows the doll is fake. What's going to happen to that woman? So it just became an obsession for me. And I saw the movie and I loved it. And it was just one of those, that was the one where I was 13 and that was just like my go-to horror movie that I watched all the time. And it was a little fresher, so it was easier to get other people to want to watch it. I never really got into any of the sequels. I watched 2. Actually, funny story about 2. Tried seeing that in the theater, but I was under 18. This was I remember it very vividly. It was on Popcorn Fest. We were it was me and Norm Erhino. We were like, let's go see part 2. And I was like, we're not 18 though, and my parents were not going to buy us tickets. So we got some other dude to drive us there who was 18 to buy us tickets, and they were like, well, the person buying the tickets has to be 21. We were like, what? So they still wouldn't let us in. I read the novelization for part 2.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And I saw 3, and then
in between all the like women you were fending off, you know.
No, please.
No, I can't go out this weekend. No, I've got the novelization of part 2 to read. Yeah. But you know what though? Hey, I just real quick, I'm going to insert. Those novelizations were pretty damn cool. I remember reading a novelization of Nightmare on Elm Street, and it was fucking badass because it gave some history that wasn't in the films, and it was actually super cool.
I read the novelization for Jaws 4. It's incredible.
Really?
It explains, it's very like this movie, voodoo centric. So it's like, oh, there's actually a rationale between the shark and this vendetta. It's because a guy on the island had a vendetta against the Brodies and was using voodoo to get back at them.
Okay,
so it wasn't just the shark. Yeah, I'm like, oh, fucking put that in the movie. What do I care?
Yeah.
That at least makes sense. Not just the shark on its own accord is going after these humans and knows where it is, where they are.
Right. Yeah. Because I remember being a kid and being like with my friends trying to sort out literally the genealogy of the shark. Like, no, that was the grandma or the grandpa. And then it was their kid. It was the dad that was in part whatever. But yeah, no, I liked, hey, voodoo is a cure-all. I mean, you slap that label on something and you can do whatever you want.
Because there were a lot of iterations of this movie where it was like, it's like full of blood and it mixes with Andy's blood, or, you know, a lot of different ways to get the doll alive. I'm fine with voodoo. You have a fucking doll walking around killing people. Like, how that happened, if I'm already in on that,
right.
Unless you're, you know, and they stick by their rules. And I think that's why I kind of fell off the franchise, because it became less about Chucky has to possess Andy, which is the whole point. So once you get away from the rules you've set in your magic world, I'm out.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I do think, it is interesting that they did get to the place that they did get to with the voodoo and whatever. You mentioned real quick the fact that they were going to wait, should we do Nan Sum first?
Oh shit, yeah. My
okay.
God. Okay. It's Andy Barclay's birthday, and all he wants is a good guy doll. His mother, Catherine, can't afford the expensive doll, but is able to buy one off of a homeless peddler. Unfortunately, the doll is possessed with the spirit of the Lakeshore Strangler, Charles Lee Ray, who, when he's not asking Andy for more hugs, is embarking on a homicidal rampage of revenge against all who did him wrong. Oh, and also he's becoming more human, so he must transfer his soul into Andy's body before it's too late, and he's stuck inside the doll's body for 6 more movies.
Yeah.
Boom. Child's Play.
And that serial killer has to have 3 names, doesn't he? I mean, and
he's a combination of 3 other killers: Charles Manson,
Lee Harvey
the
Oswald,
guy who shot Lincoln, and the guy who shot JFK. Lee Harvey Oswald and dude, man, I'm just blanking on names.
James Ray.
James Earl Ray.
Yeah, James Earl Ray, who shot MLK.
Yes.
Yeah,
not Lincoln. What am I'm just idiot.
But well, you know, he was an actor. You know, I mean, we're covering movies here, so it all runs together. But no, it's just like there's something about like
John Wilkes Booth is that guy's name.
Right, there you go. Yeah, again with the 3 names. You know, John Wayne Gacy. It's like you got to instantly earn the right to having 3 names if you kill people. But no, the what we were talking about real quick beforehand was that in the original incarnation, it was going to be called Blood Buddy. and it was going to feature a doll that was filled with a synthetic blood that if you played a little too rough with the doll, then it bled, and then you had to buy the bandages and yada yada. So I'm doing my research and finding out about this, and I'm like, why didn't they make that fucking toy? Like a toy
like in real life
that bleeds?
Yeah,
like that's
well. They went
awesome.
they were just like, we'll just make it piss and shit. That's like they do have,
Right.
they have those dolls. They're like the bleeding that can be traumatic.
Yeah. Let's go right to the kink and just avoid the violence. But yeah, that's so they're knocking on the door. But you know what's funny is that you mentioned it a bit earlier about the idea of being anti-consumerism and that sort of thing. And certainly, and I remember very, very, very vividly when I first went to my aunt's house and she had a Cabbage Patch doll, and it was the first one I had ever seen before. And she was a grown woman, like I don't know why she got it. It was kind of before the kids started getting it because the things were so goddamn expensive to start with. But what was so odd about it was that it came with its own birth certificate. And I even remember it said it was born in Dearborn, Michigan. And just weird memories. But there was just sort of this fascination with this doll. And then after that, like the whole world exploded. And really, for anybody, younger audiences that might not remember, it really was crazy. I mean, it got bad with how people were tackling each other in stores, and these poor parents having to fork out ridiculous amounts of money for their kids to have these dolls. And if the kid didn't have a doll, then they weren't, they must have been a poor kid or whatever. I mean, it was kind of a terrible little time there.
Whatever generation you're a part of, it's equivalent to like Beanie Babies, Tickle Me Elmo, PlayStation 5. That level of fervor over I have to give. I remember I had a preemie. I had a Cabbage Patch preemie, which in retrospect, super weird brand for your toys.
Right.
The premature baby. But my mom made us like buy them. Like I worked my ass off for $30 and then it was some weird thing. Like I remember going to my grandma's house and they had gotten them. It seemed shady even for me at the time. I was just like, I felt like we should go to a store to get these. Why am I like forking $60 over to my grandma? Because my brother also got one.
There wasn't a homeless peddler like shambling down the street, was there? It was nuts. But here's the thing, as we move into the movie itself, that I actually liked about it is that, yes, there is mention in Child's Play about the doll being $100, which is a lot for any doll now. It certainly would be a lot for a doll in 88. There's that mention. There's mention of the fact that, Andy, the boy, really does want one. But beyond that, they don't really get too bogged down with that sort of outside theme. Like you get the impression that it is a coveted toy. Yeah. But I love the fact that
saturating the outside world.
They didn't dwell on it, and
it's obviously important to this child, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, right. I mean, other kids could have hated that fucking doll, but as far as we knew, but no, I liked that. I really liked the choice of, how I am with the preachiness and the fact that they didn't, kind of get on a soapbox about that. And I'm not saying it's not a worthy soapbox because, like I said, the Cabbage Patch thing really was out of hand. But, they make mention of the fact that it's expensive and it's probably tough for a parent to save up for it or whatever. But yeah, they didn't dwell on it too much. They don't, interestingly enough, they don't dwell on much of anything in this movie. In fact, this movie has one of, if you count people that really have screen time, probably one of the smallest casts of movies that we've ever covered. Yeah. I mean, there's basically like 2.5 people in this movie.
Yeah. You have, a handful of extras. There's like a hospital scene. So you have people there. Yeah. And, a crime scene or two. But as far as speaking roles go, there are like 10.
Right. And even those are mostly marginalized. I mean, you would even consider, if you had to, I suppose, Chris Sarandon as the Detective Norris, you would consider him having a lead role in this, but the guy doesn't have a huge amount of screen time.
No.
So let me ask you this now. we know that it is famously shot in Chicago, and anybody who's ever been to Chicago even once in their life would instantly recognize some of the landmarks, the L train and certain businesses.
The
and
architecture they're building is very Chicago.
Yes. Yeah. So now of course, when I see this, my first thing is, me being me, I want to hear these accents. Now, it doesn't mean that if you go to Chicago and you grab 10 random people that they're all going to have a stereotypical Chicago accent. But what I found was there wasn't anything too egregious. What I was really watching out for was that somebody was going to go really heavy with a New York accent, because I think a lot of times it's the same thing as Philly.
Especially if you're playing a cop.
Right. Yeah. Like I'm playing a cop in a large city. Yeah. I must sound like I'm from Brooklyn. Of course, that makes sense.
That's funny you said, because Brooklyn is what I was thinking. Like Brooklyn is the fucking go-to.
Right. But interestingly, both Chris Sarandon, and who probably does lean a little bit more towards an East Coast-ish sounding accent, but it's relatively neutral. And also Brad Dourif, who, voices Chucky. I think I read somewhere that he was going for a Chicago accent, but interestingly enough, Chris Sarandon and Brad Dourif are both from West Virginia. Oh, so they really didn't have,
I will say Chucky's voice, because in my mind, his voice was more Brooklyn-y, but it didn't come out in this movie. I was like, oh, thank God I was wrong. Like, it might be more in the sequels. He starts laying a little more characterization into it, right? Maybe that's where that's coming from. But in this first one, it's not the it's not the performance I remember. And I think the sequels have muddled that, but not that it was bad part of it, but it was far more subdued. It's like when you watch the first Nightmare and you're like, oh, he's not cracking jokes the whole time. That's weird. Yeah.
No, you're right. Yeah. That's actually a great example, because it's amazing how kind of, I don't want to say toned down Freddy is, but he's just more serious. He's more just like get to the point and evil, which I love about that Freddy in that first one. But what's funny about, speaking of when they really do start to speak up, I just have to throw this out there while it's on my brain. It's always funny to me how, and I don't mean funny like hilarious, but it's always interesting to me how if somebody in a movie is angry at a female and they're gonna like really get at it, like they're gonna really go off on them. It was an interesting choice that, like, it's either the first or the second thing that Chucky calls Karen, but he goes right to filthy slut. I'm like, really? Like, that's he calls her a filthy slut. I'm like, you just met her. I mean, I know that you're a doll. You're a human spirit in a doll, but literally, like, she doesn't look like
a serial killer, though. I mean, he, his platitudes are, is that right? Anyway. It does also, but I mean, 80s, we threw slut around a lot more than we do now. Like,
that's true.
That's like, but it is where you don't hear slut a lot unless it's being used ironically. Like, I think it's used far more ironically these days.
Right.
But thankfully the times are changing.
Yeah, that's good for everybody.
Fingers crossed on just using cunt willfully, like whenever we like they do in Australia.
Yeah, why don't we? How did we miss the boat on that?
I don't know. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but no, the Chicago feel is real, even if the accents aren't 100% there. It's certainly, that's just minor. It feels like Chicago. It looks like Chicago, and which is kind of refreshing. I don't know, to people from Kansas, maybe one big city looks like another, but if you're from this area, it's really kind of neat. It's an extra treat, an extra layer to this movie to recognize that stuff.
Yeah, I will say, there are some parts of this that don't represent Chicago very well. What you can afford apartment-wise as a jewelry clerk at Carson Peary Scott. And it is not an apartment that size. And I looked up that building. That building is 3 blocks from the marina in Lakeview. So she's not living in that building. No. Yeah. Not a single, unless the dad left them just a ton of money and she's just like, I'm just working to do something, And
that's Carson Peary Scott, aka Carson's, right, with an S. Of course, because it's Chicagoland.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's a gorgeous apartment. I'll tell you, I love it for you. I mean, you're right. There's no way that anybody just having a kind of a regular retail job could afford that kind of space, but it's a beautiful space. It really does feel like those great tall ceiling, older apartment buildings in Chicago. And it's a nice runaround space because it almost seems to have like a circular feel where you go, down one hallway and you can cut through a doorway and come back again.
A couple ways to get the bathroom. You can get in through the bedroom and the hallway. So that adds that nice.
And it's kind of important that way because when your bad guy's legs are 8 inches tall, like you need to allow for them to be crafty, like not just an all out foot race because they're not going to win that. But no, it's a really neat setting and kind of just hearkening back to what we were talking about earlier. This movie dwells on nothing and wastes no time. It's go, go, go. And all of anything extra or anything bloated has been completely chopped away. And we almost immediately get into the action once. Well, no, we really fucking
right into it.
Into action.
They just start off. And this is kind of what I liked about this movie. If this movie had been like later on, you see Chucky and they're like, oh, you know how this happened? Magic. If that happens like in the last act of the movie, I hate it. If you're just going to start your movie like, hey, magic's in this movie, I'm like, okay, fine. And they're just like, boom, there is voodoo, chants that draw electrical storms. Fine. And you don't have to explain it. I get what's happening. They don't over explain that part.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't need to know who that guy is. I don't need to know who the cop is. I don't need backstory. This shit is like you're thrusting us right into the middle of this high tension situation. So it really sets the pace, right away, which is great. And then we have what amounts to probably the most exposition in the movie, which is just a scene where it's all kind of, I guess you could look at it as one long elaborate setup to our first kill, but we get a feel for who the mom is, who Andy is, the fact that his father has passed away and it's just the two of them. And she's kind of trying to make ends meet with a busy work schedule and a young child. So that all gets set up very efficiently, very quickly and without having to say very much.
No. And they never talk about the father. There's one photo that shows up. I saw it in Andy's bedroom. I was like, look at the one picture of that like 65-year-old man.
Right.
And then there's the identical, like they have two copies of the same picture because then that picture's also in the living room. I'm like, is that supposed to be the dad? Like, was she married to a 65-year-old man?
Yeah, and he kind of looks like he was maybe like you just see it real quick, and I don't mean to judge just
like
on appearance.
The picture that came with the frame,
but it looks like the junior in a family of Italians that moved to Chicago, and he took over the business that his father started, and they make pizzas, and it looks like like a first generation. Some older Italian guy. Mm-hmm. And his picture's just up on the wall looking way older than Karen.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, there he is. But yeah, again, not dwelling on it, not dwelling on the fact that her husband is gone. They trust the audience. And I like that. We don't need to hear all about it. Like we get it. He's gone, and that sucks. And life is hard for you and it's busy. You got a shitty boss and, who isn't considerate of the fact that you're a single parent. And that all just happens. We don't have to be told about it. We just get to see it, which is great.
Yeah. And we dive right into the first kill. Like I was surprised at how quick the first kill happens because it's the day he gets the doll. Just in my mind, there was just more fluff, which there isn't really in this movie.
No.
And which is a great, I mean, I had some issues with it only, we're going to go into Andy's cynical corner for a second where I like the idea of where he's listening to Chucky. He's like, Aunt Maggie, Chucky wants to watch the news, which I could understand. If you're in that position, say you're the guy in the doll, you can use that position of this, you can emotionally manipulate this child into getting what you want and be like, yeah, I want to watch the news. And of course, an adult would just be like, oh, that's just him saying that for him. But he also immediately reveals to Andy his real name. Like, why in the fuck did you do that?
Right. Yeah. Just on walking down the hallway. Like,
right. Just like, I love more hugs. Also, I died and my name is Charles Lee Ray and I'm wanted for the murders of 8 people.
And your mom's friend is a bitch. You're right. That's a lot of that happens, and we don't see it. But what I like about, if there is one good part about that, not seeing a lot of development of Chucky, is that when and first of all, let me just say real quick, the kid, and he is very much a kid, 7 years old, that they get to play Andy is just a sweetheart. This kid, and I
loved him.
So cute how he got the job. He went to an audition. He did a couple commercials. I think he started when he was 5. A friend of his mom said, hey, I've got some connections. Let's get this kid on, in commercials and stuff. So he did that. And then he goes to this audition. And what I think rules is that they must have had that bitch line in there in the audition for these kids, probably just to see if they would do it, if they would say it, or if they'd freak out. So the kid that they cast, his mom was there, and he actually he saw the word, and even at 7 years old, he knew that was a bad word. So he pretended that he like flubbed the line or forgot the line because he was too embarrassed to say it in front of his mom. And so the casting directors are like, this kid is just acting his nuts off in real life, like right now, like he's lying to our faces, and it's working. So they cast him, and it was.
I thought they would have cast him off the crying, because he's got one scene where he cries, and it is a good cry, dude. I was like, oh, heart-wrenching cry.
Yeah. Sweet.
I'm like,
kid.
they must have just been like, this kid knows how to cry. Let's have one, because he doesn't really cry about any of the, like when his Aunt Maggie, like if you call someone Aunt Maggie, he really does not that affected by her death.
Yeah.
So there's not really a lot of areas where he should be crying where he is, but they were just like, we need one scene where he's crying, because he fucking nails the crying.
Yeah. And on top of everything, and this is probably the best factor of him, is that he's not completely fucking grating and annoying, which is usually what happens when you have kids in any role at that age. It's hard to find like a kid that has a real genuine presence, and you're like, God, I can't stand this kid,
Yeah.
But yeah, he's just a sweetheart, just a sweet little boy, and does a fantastic job. But back to what I was saying. What's that?
Great name.
Great name. But what I love about the fact that they didn't like really lead us on with too much interaction with Chucky and Andy early on is that when Chucky does commit that first murder, that fucking hammer strike comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And it's shocking. And what was really kind of fun is I'm watching this movie, and I'm not sure if I made this clear earlier or not, but I had never seen this movie in its entirety before. I've seen bits and pieces. So this is the first time I'm watching it. And the real question that I had in my mind is, how are they going to make this scary? How is it? I'm literally sitting there as I'm watching it, and I'm genuinely intrigued. How are they going to make this premise scary? And when that friggin' hammer comes out and she gets blasted in the forehead and falls out the window, it's like, okay, like I'm with you. Like this is working.
Yeah.
That little thing's terrifying. Yeah.
And they used the first cut of this movie showed a lot more of Chucky, and it didn't test very well. And so they kind of went back and re-edited it. And there's more of the Jaws slow reveal until finally you get that scene where we see Chucky as Chucky, not the good guy doll, where his face changes. Like that's Jaws popping out of the wall. That's the come and chum this shit scene in Jaws,
Right.
And it's, 2/3 of the way into the movie. Well, I guess it's more halfway into the movie, but it's still, you've got a lot of implication before you finally see the crazy side of Chucky. Because even the Aunt Maggie, and then he convinces Andy to skip school and take him to kill his former associate who left him high and dry in the opening scene. He was the getaway guy and he took off.
Yeah.
Like even that, you don't see the doll. You see things he's picking up and doing, but you really don't see the doll at all. There's a lot of mystery surrounding that.
Right. And there's maybe not as much as certain earlier incarnations of the script, but you'd think that it might be kind of a tall order for any sort of professional detectives or police to think that this young boy committed this murder. But when they start piecing it all together and they see these tiny little footprints on a bunch of flour that's all over the counter, and they've got a murder weapon, this hammer, all of a sudden it does seem plausible. Like, I think your son might be psychotic and a killer. And,
right.
and
that's the rational conclusion to come to right then. Like,
there's nothing else. There's no forced entry. There's nothing else at all. So, and this is, it's so funny. No matter how many movies I see, this stuff always still gets me. And I don't know how to describe it, but it's those parts in movies where the innocent person is accused and all of the facts are stacking up against them. And I just can't wait for them to be proven innocent. Like, it's so, it's so tense while people think that the innocent person is guilty. And yeah, this poor Andy at every turn, it's like, shit, I think that he's the one who did it.
Yeah.
And he's kind of fucked.
He's not even crying about this murder that happened. He seems very detached emotionally.
Yeah. But it's funny. You mentioned the scene earlier. Now there's plenty that happens between the hammer strike and what I'm about to say, but I will say that the next note that I have written down here from my viewing notes is one word, and it is batteries.
And, was that your scene?
No, it is.
Oh, okay.
I've got a scene coming up that was, we were talking earlier, was the one that creeped me out the most, but this batteries is right up there though. And it's so funny because it's like super ironic, because usually it's the exact opposite as of a parent buying a toy.
Which is when I'm watching the scene, I was like, here's where she picks up the box and it says batteries not included. And she realized she never put batteries in it. And they dropped out. And I was like, oh, damn, they had their own brand of batteries. Impressive.
Right. And it's like, normally as a parent, you buy this toy and you get home and you're like, God damn it, I have to go out and get batteries. And like, this is actually a parent's dream. Like, the doll works without the batteries. Like, you just hit the lottery right there.
Yep.
But
that was the whole scene in
freaky.
Siskel and Ebert. It started with her picking up the box and the batteries dropping out. And it ended with, because that scene ends with her opening the case. The head does the full Exorcist 180, and he says, in a little more sinister voice, but still the good guy's voice, "Hi, I'm Chucky. Want to play?" And then she screams, and he rolls under the couch, and I was hooked for life.
Yeah, it is freaky. Like, I mean, all kidding aside, like, that is an eerie ass moment. And because you're just waiting, because the camera in the background is Chucky, and you're just waiting for that head to turn a little bit or something, but they keep him still for right up until that moment with the batteries, and it's played out so beautifully. And then that's where we have that actress. I'm sorry, I have her name here somewhere.
Catherine Hicks.
Yes.
Which I think I called her Catherine in Nan's Son, which it's supposed to be Karen. But again,
it's close.
I didn't even remember she had a name. She's called Mommy so much in this movie. I just assume that's what her name is. And
you got to think for a second. Just take yourself out for a moment. And it's on the shooting schedule. You're an actress. You're in this movie. And you have to look down at what your scene schedule is for shooting that day. And you know that this is the day that you have to interrogate a doll intensely, right? And remember, nobody else in the world at this moment, when you're this actress, knows who Chucky is, knows what Child's Play is. There is no phenomena. There are no sequels. There are no millions of dollars coming in. You just know, fuck, I've got to sell this and play it legit. And she does. Like, she finally gets pissed at that. And you're so excited for her to finally, finally Andy has some sort of vindication here, and she's going after who she really needs to go after. And she does. Like, that's Mama Bear style. Like, she's not fucking around.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. It's in a scene that could have collapsed into ridiculous hilarity. They keep the tension. They do.
Well, and even in that part you're talking about, they're able to escalate it even more, because that's when the Brad Dourif Chucky comes out, and it's because she's already yelling, and now he's like, you know what? I'm going to top your emotional insanity, and because instead of it, all you've heard is the good guy voice, and then all of a sudden, oh, you fucking bitch! Oh!
Yeah,
I love Mad Brad Dourif. Can we just for a brief moment, some Brad Dourif appreciation? Because ever since we covered Exorcist 3, and I loved him I knew him from this, but he's just one of those actors where you just kind of forget about him, or he's in stuff. Yeah, he's a great actor, but he's never done any tentpole thing or anything. He's always this awesome supporting role. So now when he pops up and stuff, I don't know if it's just because I'm paying more attention to him, but I love him more and more. You're just like, oh shit, right, he's in Lord of the Rings and he's awesome in that. And then we were watching Alien Resurrection, which is a terrible movie, but I shouldn't say terrible. Not as good as it should have been. But Brad Dourif is just giving this awesome Brad Dourif performance. He just brings this awesomeness to a project that only Brad Dourif brings. But it's not it's hard to replicate, you can't just be like, I'm going to do a Brad Dourif here.
Right.
His daughter can, though. His daughter, I should say, she's in the last 2 Chucky movies, in Cult, and I forget what the other one's called. And then we actually started watching this show called Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, with starring future friend of the show, Elijah Wood. And there's this character in it who is, because it's a lot of subtle psychic ability stuff in the show. There's a lot of mysticism in it. Mm-hmm. And this character shows up, and she's a holistic assassin, to where the whole essence of her character is she's never killed the wrong person. To her, the universe delivers whoever she has to kill to her. Food shows, she meets up, she hooks up with another character, and he takes her to a restaurant, and she's floored by it. And he's like, have you never eaten in a restaurant? And she's just like, food just comes to me when I need it. That's it. She's this dirty, gross, she's caked in blood almost the whole time. And I'm just like, who is this person? And it's Fiona Dourif. I'm like, oh, okay. This all makes complete sense. It is Brad Dourif's daughter doing this role. And she's great. Check out that show. You'll need to when we eventually do our interview with Elijah Wood. I'm sure that'll happen some point. No,
we're gonna will that to happen. Yeah. That character, he will come to us. The universe will draw him to us.
It's our next holistic interview.
But no, you're exactly right. The mantle that he belongs upon is the same one that's held by, let's say, I'm going to say Gary Oldman. Okay. Now, Gary Oldman is a name that even people that don't know a ton of varied or different levels of actors out there will kind of throw that out there as a name. I'm not going to pick the usuals De Niro, Pacino, Nicholson, that sort of thing. My favorite actor is Gary Oldman. And they think that that's really throwing an ace down on the table, which it is, because Gary Oldman fucking rules. But Brad Dourif deserves to be in that same conversation. A guy that just brings it in every single role. And I really like what you said about the fact that nobody's going to sit there and do a Brad Dourif impression, because he's so genuine. He really rides a line of being over the top and genuine at the same time. And he can really push emotional intensity in a role pretty far without ever seeming like he's being a caricature. And even in his early stuff, God, he was literally plucked off of an off-Broadway stage in some just rando show that he was doing. And he had joined moved up from West Virginia to New York, was studying with Meisner, and was just in an off-Broadway production. And then somebody saw him, a casting director or somebody from Cuckoo's Nest saw him and immediately cast him as Billy Bibbit for Cuckoo's Nest. And even as a young actor, he's just lightning in a bottle in that role. Just so heartbreaking.
Did he get an introducing billing for that? Was he like, and introducing?
It wasn't technically his first. It's a good question. His very first screen performance was in an unreleased movie, and I can't remember the name of it, but I don't know if that would have taken away his eligibility for in introducing, but he deserves one. I mean, that'd be cool to see.
Speaking of billing, I feel he got the short end of the stick in this movie. And, I'm sure they've corrected it. And I also know it's all like billing is all done with agents, and there's a whole fucking shebang that goes along with it. But just to have Brad Dourif as a co-starring credit in this, like in the very least, like give him the and Charles Dourif or Brad Dourif as Chucky. Like that's where that should be. And that's probably what they were in the subsequent films. But I was just like, whoa, co-starring. This guy's in this. He's the movie.
He's fucking Chucky.
He's fucking Chucky.
Okay, like maybe Chucky has something to do with Child's Play. Like I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Chucky is an important component of the Child's Play film.
It's like Brad Pitt co-starring in Benjamin Button.
Right. Yes. It's he deserves
a hot
so much
reference
more
of Benjamin Button. Super relevant.
How timely. Yeah.
It just gets younger. That reference gets younger as we go on.
That's so awesome. But no, he deserves so much more than that.
What's going to happen with Benjamin Button? Like in 100 years, people will just be like, Benjamin Button is the hottest, freshest movie.
Yeah.
Right on the cover. Benjamin. Okay, we're up.
Weekly. Yeah. You gotta see
the hot list.
Yes. 20 years in a row, moving up the ladder steadily. But yeah, Brad Dourif put a lot into his performance. There's, what's funny is that a lot of people know now is that he was hired to play the live action version of the serial killer that are in the scenes in the beginning of the film. And then he was basically dismissed, like his role was over and done with. And they had an actress voicing the Chucky doll.
Yeah.
And then
not just any actress though.
Who is it? I recognized her name, but who is
Jessica Walters, who is Lucille Bluth on Arrested Development. Like she has a very unique voice, a very weird choice. To have then be the voice of this doll. But yeah, like she does the voice of like Archer's mom on Archer. If you saw her, I'm sure you are not a huge Arrested Development guy. You should be. It's a great show. But yes, if you saw her, you'd go, oh, that late. Like you've probably seen 100 memes of her more than you've probably seen the show.
Yeah, I think I know who she is. Yeah. And so they said that her voice was kind of sufficiently creepy, but they just didn't feel like it fit the tone of the rest of the movie, which, anything in Chicago is going to have like a slightly grittier feel to it. So that's when they said, well, who should we cast as the voice of Chucky? And then it just made sense. We'll bring Brad Dourif back. So that was kind of a happy
accident. Did you see who
there.
Almost also got that part though?
I did read a couple others.
John Lithgow.
Yeah. Yeah.
I could see, because he'd just done like Buckaroo Banzai. Like he was good at playing crazy people. I don't know how well his voice would have translated. Like I couldn't imagine then like John Lithgow's voice and Chucky. My John Lithgow is awesome.
I can get.
Andy, I love more hugs.
Yeah, it might have even been too creepy. Like now that I think about it. But yeah, so thank God they brought him back. And apparently, like, there's stories of Brad Dourif just running around the sound studio, like just doing laps and freaking out, and then basically just immediately stopping himself and then delivering the lines so that it had that sort of rushed intensity. And he's fucking awesome. He's great. Yeah. And it's also in this moment. I mean, we can't cover this movie without talking about the doll, which is, again, an important part. I was a little worried when I started watching this movie again, first time, that, okay, how is this really going to be? how's it going to come across? Is it going to look cheesy? Is it going to be like one of those things where the mouth really only opens like up and down and doesn't really articulate? And I was shocked at how good this doll was. I mean, it was creepy when it needed to be. It was mean when it needed to be. And from what I read, there were times where they would have no less than 9 puppeteers working this doll at the same time to get all of those different points of articulation. And it fucking still works to this day. It looked great.
Yeah. It's also a great mix of puppetry and then using real people. Like the first kind of shot with the babysitter where she sees it out of the corner of her eye, like that's so effective because it still looks like the size of the doll, but it looks like a fluid motion. Like you're not just like, oh, that's like some shitty stop motion effect or something. And it's also like the brightness of the color contrasted with that drab hallway. Like I love just even that shot. Like that's like that would fuck you up if you saw that out of the corner of your eye, man. So like,
no, and okay. So you're bringing me right now to that point that I've been waiting on, which it's probably going to sound so just inconsequential when I say it, but the part that freaked me out most in this movie is when Andy, skipping ahead a little bit here, Andy, they still think that he's the one committing these murders. The police don't really know it or buy it yet that the doll has been possessed or anything like that. So poor Andy's just whiling away the hours in some, I'm guessing like child mental facility. And
which quickly, can I mention?
Yeah,
like that place when the mom and the detective show up there is the most run down, shitty looking place. It looks like there are Dickensian children, like there's with dirt on their face, just sitting in the hall. I'm like, this looks like where they get there and go, oh, this is a front for money laundering or something like. But anyway, regardless, like, that place, I didn't know what was up with that institution he was at, but go ahead.
Yeah. Just because there are a lot of Serbs in Chicago doesn't mean that the movie takes place in Bosnia. Like, because that's exactly what it looks like. Yeah. War torn.
Yeah.
But so poor Andy's in this shitty, dilapidated mental facility for children. And he's looking out his window and he knows that Chucky's coming for him. And that's where you see that real live action, that little person. Is that the proper term, little person? For
probably not, but we'll allow it.
So a little person, a little actor,
short stature, we'll say.
Yes, I believe I read somewhere was the actor from Howard the Duck, actually. But it's a distanced shot. Okay, so we're it's not like we're seeing it up close. We're seeing it through Andy's window. He's kind of looking out over a courtyard, and there's a set of stairs in the distance, probably 100 yards away, and that's where Chucky is coming to kill Andy. Or I'm sorry, to possess his body. And we see that little butt just climbing up those stairs.
Yep.
And like you said, the movements are fluid. They're human movements. But yet in those, suspenders with the striped shirt and that red hair, and you're like, fuck, that is terrifying.
Yeah.
I mean,
that shot, and just a few seconds later where he's in Andy's room and is climbing up on the bed.
Yeah.
But it doesn't look like, man, and there is no PC way to say this, but it doesn't look like the movements that I'm accustomed to. Like I can look at someone and be like, there is, someone with dwarfism in a costume, right? Like,
right.
It doesn't have that. Like it looks like the fucking doll. Like I don't know if they use different.
I know what you mean.
Proportions or something for the room. It's very effective. The some of those movements, but they also don't dwell on them. And maybe if I saw like 30 seconds of that, I'd be like, oh, okay.
Right. But yeah, just to see like it grows progressively as the movie goes on, that you just find yourself as a viewer buying Chucky's evil and Chucky's what do I want to say, like potential danger. You just are buying into that more and more and more as the movie goes on, because it's like, well, what could he really do? Because you think to yourself, well, I could just kick that thing or whatever.
Right.
But he's a big fan of slicing calves. And it does not feel good to have your calf muscle sliced.
Yeah. Yeah. He's small. He can hide. He can get in places you can't. I guess we didn't really cover, but yeah, there is kind of a point in the movie because it's a revenge movie for him. And then he's like, oh, I'm starting to get hurt in this body. And he goes to the voodoo guy, and the guy's like, you have to you have to, possess the person you first told. And he's like, oh, well, I'm an idiot and I told a child. So
Yeah.
he's going to he's going to get inside a little boy, Tim.
I guess so. Yeah. Isn't that something? Yeah. He's excited about being, 6 years old again.
But I love that scene. Like he's got the voodoo doll of the guy and he's just like breaking his limbs and the guy's arms and legs are breaking. And he just stabs him and leaves him for dead. Like it's a very effective voodoo. But then also like the voodoo guy is like, look, man, like I didn't mean for you to use this for evil. You're sick. So I did like that. I'm like, well, at least like it's good voodoo that just someone corrupted.
Yeah. And you might think to yourself like, voodoo, Chicago, like how does this match up? But I literally have been to a voodoo store in Chicago before that had like, bottles of teeth and stuff and crazy things. And I mean, it was
it
on
the alley?
No, it was kind of not too terribly far away.
Go to the alley, get your jars of teeth. Voodoo. Yeah, anyone who listened to Q101 in like 2000 knows that ad.
Oh yeah, my God. Yeah. Like, I mean, it was just vocal methamphetamine, like blasting through your speakers.
You've got wallets with chains and you can put it on your pants. Come down to the alley. Teeth. We're right next to the new Starbucks.
Yeah, but it was, but I mean, apparently there is a voodoo presence in Chicago. And like I said earlier, thankfully, like when you slap that voodoo, and I'm not taking it, I mean, voodoo is a very much a serious business for the folks that believe in it. And I know it's their religion, so I don't want to disparage it, but I mean, it is because it is so mysterious. Well, that's all you got to say is, well, it has something to do with voodoo. And then everybody's like, well, yeah, whatever happens.
Right.
But yeah, that's pretty gnarly when he's getting his limbs cracked and stuff. And then we figure out what has to happen and goes after Andy. And then we get to, as this is happening, we get to see a little bit more of Chris Sarandon as the detective who is, Chris Sarandon, he's got such an awesome screen presence. Like, first of all, I love seeing him anytime where it's like, oh, this isn't Princess Bride, and there's Chris Sarandon. Like right, that's always a treat.
Yeah, Nancy popped in. She's like, "Who is that?" I'm like, "Humperdinck." Oh, right. Yeah.
Or from Fright Night, of course.
Yes.
But yeah, he's got always has this sort of like, I guess he has leading man looks about him, and he has this sort of worldly vibe that he gives off of somebody that commands sort of respect or that sort of thing. But he's always got a little twinkle in his eye. Like, I mean, he's a funny guy, and he does comedy really well. And while he doesn't do out and out comedy in this, he has to play a guy that's faced with some really unrealistic circumstances, and he does a great job with it.
Yeah.
And don't fuck it up by having him fall in love with the mom. Like that's something that would be so typical of any other movie like this made by anybody else, that they would have some sort of love story emerge between Andy's mother and the head policeman. But yeah, thankfully they skip all that.
No, he's just doing his job.
Yeah. Yep. And also, speaking of doing your job, when Chucky finally does encounter Detective Norris, Chucky is finally giving a just master class on how you do stab someone through a chair, which obviously needed to be seen by the killer in whatever the hell we just covered.
Oh yeah, He Knows You're Alone.
Yeah, He Knows You're Alone. Yeah, this is how you stab a fucker through a chair, because that thing is going deep and hard, and it's freaky. Comes up through the middle or the bottom, I think.
Yeah.
And it's awesome.
Yeah, man, there's just so much I love in this movie. It's weird too, because when it ended, I was like, that felt longer than an hour and a half, but not a bad way, I guess. And maybe it's just because I'd seen it so much, like there was nothing. I had no new fresh take on it,
Right.
It was just kind of like reminiscing with an old friend. But yeah, God, I loved this movie still.
Well, I just think that it's like we keep saying, it's not complicated. It's not bloated. And it is, you're so ready to laugh at it, but then it's genuinely kind of creepy and disturbing. And so it's kind of the perfect little movie. And I also have seen no sequels, so I can't speak to how good or bad they are. I mean, I think that they kind of went a little bit more for the comedy, is what I understand about in the sequels.
Oh yeah. All the Jennifer Tilly shit is like just.
I love Jennifer Tilly.
Yeah, and she's great. Yeah, but yeah, those ones are very. I at least know about those. I don't even know like the plots to the last two with Fiona Dourif. Like, I don't even understand what those are about. But yeah, they get very just hammy, still very violent, and like the kills are creative, I guess you could say. But yeah, it's just the river of ham is flowing thickly.
I guess I just love the idea of, when I look at a movie like this and it ends up being successful, and it's just so neat to know that that a production company just went in on this and bought the idea of it. Like it seems like nobody would want to come within 10 feet of this thing. But it was, interestingly, it was David Kirshner, the producer, who saw the script for it, and he had just come off of An American Tail. Now, what was An American? That was a cartoon, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was a Don Bluth with Fievel, the Russian mouse.
So David Kirshner gets right off of that movie, and he's like, "Oh, a killer child toy! Like, fuck yes, I'm so ready for that." So he's the one that champions it, and it was actually he just even took it on himself. He's just this movie producer. He started drawing these sketches on his own, and then it was United Artists that saw the sketches and saw the script, and they're like, "Yeah, this sounds pretty cool." So I don't know. It's just it seems so improbable that this would ever have any legs as a movie or a franchise. And it rules. It's nice that it's got its own little place in the horror arena.
Yeah. And I do think it comes down to Brad Dourif's performance and the name Chucky. I just think that name, it pops. It just is awesome.
No, you're right. I mean, there's, I was going to say it earlier when you were talking about it. There is something about like hard consonant sounds that make some, like even curse words, make some bad words better. Like, like cocksucker sounds great because it has all those hard R's, or fuck, just a word.
Yeah.
Fuck, like has a hard, just stop, it has an urgency. It's not lyrical. It's not like I'm gonna la you so hard. Like it's you need right. Something that has that hard consonant sound. And Chucky sounds,
and it starts with just like biting your teeth with the like biting your lip. I mean, yeah.
Right. But yeah, no, it's a great idea. I'm glad that I saw it. I don't know why like I said, I think I know why it took so long, was that I didn't think that it would have anything for me. I thought that I was kind of, I had seen too much to revert back to a killer doll movie, but I was wrong. Do
you know much about the reboot?
I saw it.
Oh, you did?
I saw it in the theater. Yeah, I haven't seen the original.
Wait, what?
Didn't see the original from 1988, but yes, paid money to take my children and myself.
The most surprising answer I've gotten to anything in a year.
Yes, I did go see, and the reason is, and I'd be remiss to not mention this, one of my daughters absolutely loves the Child's Play franchise, and it's funny because, she's easily scared. She's easily frightened, but because she's my daughter, she's been forced to watch a lot of horror movies, and she takes it in stride. She does pretty well, but there was something about Child's Play. I think just because it's a doll, like it's something a little bit more to latch onto, because even though she's a teenager, it wasn't that long ago that she would have been into dolls or something.
Sure.
And she quotes it all, like even like if she's mad at somebody, she always says like, "I'm going to jump on their back and bite them in the neck." Like, like she just like a big part of her like lexicon is from this movie. Or even like there was even a while where she started saying like I asked her a question and she'd say something like, "Sure, I will." And it was just like a really weird response. But then I'm watching this movie. I'm like, oh, that's creepy. It's fucking Chucky saying that. So yeah, it was a really sort of endearing watch for me, knowing how much she loves it. In fact, it was her favorite Christmas present this year. I got her a like 5 like glassware set, like 5-piece set of Chucky glasses, commemorative glasses.
Wow.
And
you're the best dad ever.
Oh, thank you. And she loved it. I even got her a shirt, which I thought was going to be the number 1 present, but then I realized it is the Chucky from the remake, which she quickly pointed out, not the real Chucky. So, it kicked it down a couple notches.
Keen eye would be able to tell the difference, Tim.
Yes, and I should have.
So what did you think of the reboot? Because I would imagine not too much, because that one is pretty thick on the like preachy dangers of technology and consumerism and shit, because it's a rogue AI in that one, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that it was. I didn't think the movie sucked from a competence standpoint. I mean, it's made in a pretty straight ahead way. I can tell you that I remembered next to nothing about it, and so I mean, I stayed awake the whole time. I know that I watched it. I'm sure.
Do you know who did the voice for Chucky in that movie?
No.
Really? Luke Skywalker, Mark Hamill.
Oh yeah, that's right. And he is a great voice. He was
one of the best voice actors. Who saw that coming?
Yeah, right. Right.
My God, anything that guy touches is a gold.
I know.
Voice acting wise.
Yes. But no, he's the movie is it's kind of harmless. I would give it that. I mean, obviously this original is far better, and I would recommend it way faster than I would the remake, but it was still okay. I mean, I'm sure for an enthusiast who probably maybe was getting a little disillusioned by the sort of watering down and extra comedy of all of the sequels, maybe they liked the reboot because it was just at least getting it back to horror.
Right.
But I don't know. Have you seen it? Have you seen it?
No.
Okay.
And I think it's just, I mean, it's not like I'm like a stan for the franchise. I really love the first movie and the character of Chucky there.
Got it. Okay.
So yeah, I'm not like anything Chucky is I'm in. Like, I really lost interest after, because I think the third one was okay too. I mean, the sequels are fine. There are like some good kills. Like there's one, and I think it's in the second one, where he like attacks one of Andy's teachers. Like he goes to Andy's school, and he's got like a basketball pump, like that air pump, and he's stabbing it in and then pumping air in, and that part I read in the novelization, and I was like, I don't know if I could handle watching this movie. Like if that's in there, it might not be in there. They might have switched it.
What part of the body is getting pumped?
Oh, just wherever he can stab, and then he's just like pumping air into the blood stream, which is bad apparently.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
No.
Wow.
One thing I wanted to ask, and this is something I thought of while watching it. I looked up to see if this were true. I got no confirmation, but I'm certainly not the first person that I saw through my research to come up with this notion. And I don't know how familiar you are with the movie Toy Story, which is a movie about toys that come to life, and the owner of the toys is Andy.
Oh,
there has to be there's no way the Toy Story writers were unaware. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I've seen nothing from Toy Story people being like, yes, we definitely came up with the name Andy because we all loved this other movie about an alive toy.
Right.
And one of the detectives' name is Sid, which is the name of his neighbor in Toy Story. So that's another where you're just like, come on.
I could easily, I don't know if I could confirm that, but I could easily buy into that. Yeah. I mean, that even if it's just subconscious, like I'm writing this movie about a kid who really likes his toys, like Andy, I mean, that might subconsciously come to mind.
Yeah.
No, that's interesting. Yeah. I could buy that. I could see that.
Just Andy's love toys. I mean, our listeners can't hear, but you can certainly see the Zoom behind me, the fucking shelves of my toys.
Yes.
I myself own that are not my children's.
Yeah, maybe that's just an Andy thing.
Yeah, I was fated from birth. If only I'd been named Timmy, my life would have been so much better.
I don't know though. Those are some pretty sweet toys back there.
Oh, thank you.
I'm looking at them. Yeah,
Yes.
I'm enjoying that.
My Boba Fett Lego bust right there.
Yeah. Is that a Demigorgon on the top shelf?
It is, yes, right here. I've got
nice.
a Pickle Rick, a Demigorgon, a John Oliver, and a Lando. But this is the Donald Glover Lando Calrissian. That's why I have him, not the who was my least favorite part of Solo. Amazingly enough, one of my favorite artists was my least favorite part of that movie that I thought I would hate, but ended up loving. That movie like put me on a real roller coaster.
Do you know? Speaking of toys, did you happen to notice the Ecto box on the shelf in the toy store? They actually had a Ghostbusters. And it was a real toy. They had like the box that you would trap the ghosts in from Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
And it was on the shelf.
These Ghostbusters.
Oh, wait a second. Oh, yeah.
This is
yeah.
Slimer and my 2 Ghostbuster Funko Pop guys. Yeah.
So awesome.
No, I didn't see any
Ghostbusters. Do you have an Ecto box?
No. I wish. I didn't see it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's on the shelf hanging out there. I don't know if it was intentional, being that they were, dealing with some supernatural stuff, but it was a nice little product placement there. Damn. But no, I like this movie. I mean, I'm glad that you had suggested it. Originally, we were thinking about it because we were bandying about the idea of doing a month of Chicago-based horror movies, and this was, I think, the first thing that you mentioned was your response. We were texting, and you said like Child's Play. And I, at that time, had no idea that you loved this movie so much.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, it's all right. Let's do Child's Play. I've strangely never seen it before. But no, I'm glad that I did. Super great movie. And just
there aren't a lot of Chicago-centric ones. I can think of Candyman, and that's about it.
Yeah.
So let's scrap the month idea.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Fortnite. Yeah. The Chicago
Fortnite of Fright?
Yes. Fort Fright.
Oh, yeah. Damn.
Yeah. Fort Fright Night. Yeah. Well, we got to do it now.
We have to.
But no, I'm glad you recommended it. How could I possibly claim to be any sort of horror or especially slasher? Because that's kind of the funny thing about it is at the end of the day, it's not just a demonic doll movie. It's a demonic doll slasher movie. And it's easily qualifies as a slasher. And so, yeah, how could I go another day without having seen it? So I'm glad that I did.
Excellent. Well, yeah, it's a big recommend from me. It's a good time. Maybe a nostalgia is taking me over, but I'm allowed. That's allowed.
Yeah.
You can do that sometimes. All right. Well, cool. Well, I think that wraps it up on 1988's Child's Play. Tim, next week, we're going to talk about this movie's from 2015 from the Kiwis, New Zealand. It's a movie called Deathgasm. I'm very excited about this one. It looks bonkers, and I can't wait. So yeah, cool. So I can't wait for that. Please check us out on Instagram at Slumber Podcast Massacre. Our email is slumberpodcast@gmail.com. Please keep sending the emails. We love getting them. And our Patreon is patreon.com/Slumber Podcast Massacre. Huge thanks to our patrons for helping make this possible. I don't know, maybe when we get that Elijah Wood interview, maybe that'll be a patron only benefit.
Just around the corner.
Yeah, it's just
all we have to do is actually
right
ask him. Like I think when we ask him, we'll be a step closer. When we actually
when I figure out what possible way I could get in touch with anyone associated with Elijah Wood, I'm gonna make it happen. That's my 2021 goals. Elijah Wood interview.
I think we can do it.
Okay, cool. Well, Tim, do you got anything else to say about Child's Play?
Well, I don't know about Child's Play specifically, but if we're talking about doing these month-long theme, sort of presentations let's maybe consider one a month long of your horror novelizations that you've read. That's I want to hear more. I want to hear more about that.
I think it's only been Child's Play 2 and Jaws the Revenge. Those might have been my only novelizations, but I'm willing to read more.
Yes.
Hey, but we'll do the class. I'm going to read the novelization of like The Shining, not the original book. I'll read.
Do they have a novelization of Deathgasm?
I'm gonna check Amazon right now.
Yes.
All right. Well, Tim, all I have
when you look up Deathgasm on Amazon, you might find things other than novelizations. Let me just say that.
I'm gonna have to go to page 8 or 9.
Right.
Tim, I do have something to say. This is the end, friend.
Oh,
I love you. I'll see you later, Timmy. Bye.
Love you too. Happy Valentine's Day.